seen esports and the E-League?
I don't know if that's sports, but it's great mind savvy.
But I don't know if athlete is the right word that I would go for.
If you don't break a sweat, I don't consider it a sport.
Oh, no, you do.
Watching people play video games isn't like watching people play football. It's like watching people play fantasy football. It is one more step removed from human activity. You understand?
It's video games. It shouldn't be on a sports network. It's video games.
But can it truly be a spectator sport?
It already is. 71 million watched it last year. They reckon it's going to, by 2017, it'll be 145 million people watching it.
They're actually giving college scholarships for video gaming.
You're kidding.
And it's even gone to the point that now the government has acknowledged professional video gamers as athletes.
Same way you'd watch a football match, you can hear the crowd, everyone's cheering the team on, you make friends, these are people you talk to, you play with online. It's all about community, it's being part of something that you're incredibly passionate about.
Running for Barrett though right now, trying to establish vision control and force Ambition! Ambition steals the Elder Dragon! He gets away! He's alive! This is a 4-Drake Elder Dragon! He lives! Ambition saves the game once again!
I mean, I absolutely love that video. All right, well, hey, welcome everybody. This is another customer spotlight, and I'm super pumped today to be joined with John Depa from Riot Games. John, welcome to a customer spotlight webinar.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Steven.
Absolutely, man. I have had the joy and just kind of pleasure to get to know John and a lot of his team members, but mostly John. Really, I think it was like somewhere in November-ish, somewhere in the fall, maybe last year, they kind of started taking a look at show flow. And I get pumped anytime someone in esports kind of discovers show flow, because I think you guys are probably just doing some of the coolest stuff there is in terms of like forward-leaning production, technology, and just narratives that, you know, we've all been watching the same narratives for years, whether it's a corporate ballroom and some CEO up on the stage, or even just, you know, traditional broadcast sports. You know, that's exciting and fun, but it's just another season, another year, another story. But you guys are just reinventing things over there, and I think it's probably one of the coolest things ever. So again, welcome, John. I'm really, really happy and proud to have you today on our webinar.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. So, okay. So real quick, and then I'll let John drive for a second. That was a video that him and Riot Games have put together, and we're going to go into that in a second. JP Chat is our sort of webinar chat moderator. So if you have any questions or anything specific for John, I mean, you can ask me a question, but I'm not that interesting. If you have anything for John, start streaming them in via the little chat in the Q&A. JP collects those. He sends those right in front of me, and I'm the one who kind of queues them up for John. So please, please, please bring those in. And then just the format for this is a 1-hour webinar. They usually go long, but we are respectful for your timing and create a checkpoint right at the 1 hour. And today we're really going to try and spend about the first 20-ish minutes with John and just what is esports, and how do they approach production in esports, and then we're going to go obviously into show flow and see how he uses show flow to pull off some of the coolest production every single day. So that's our space. If you are out there and you're actually curious about wanting to get into this industry of production and esports, this is a good webinar. John's the man. You need to be talking to him, and so his Twitter's right there, and so make sure you tweet thing, whatever it is, go ahead and hit him up. But this guy's a pro. He really knows what he's doing. So with that, John, I like to start this kind of question with all our spotlights, but how did you even find this industry? Like, how did you get into esports and specifically the production side of it?
Yeah, so I've been working in the television industry since 2015. A few of you may be wondering, he's in Berlin, but he doesn't sound, German. I'm an American. I was born in Chicago, and I worked in the Chicago and Boston television markets from 2015 to 2018. Did a lot of, news, field, package producing, some multicam reality, things like this. But I also did a lot of multi-camera, like large events. I ended up freelancing in a ton of different roles, everything from, I suppose, being a PA and doing carpentry to, mixing audio. In 2016, I actually had my first Riot event experience where I was a runner for the local Chicago area when they did their, I believe it was their World's 2016 quarterfinals that year around. I was already a gamer at the time. I was already working in the television industry, and seeing this production up close, having the realization that, like, hey, I played this game and they're doing this show, and the production behind it is insane. I knew that I had to be involved. So I've been formally working with Riot in their European offices since 2018. And I work on a team of 4 broadcast producers to do the European Championship.
That's awesome, man. And then you guys, so is your particular production group and team based right there in Berlin, or is it kind of a distributed team in multiple locations?
So the European Championship is based all here in Berlin. We have our home studios in Studio Berlin, and our on-air talent, our producers, writers, our core staff all live here. And we utilize local freelancing and production entities as well from the Berlin area for our shows that happen here in Berlin. But we have, and as you'll see later in the presentation, we have a lot of sister studios at Riot Games for their own broadcasts worldwide. We collaborate a lot with them for our international events.
Cool. Well, yeah, man, take us on your journey. Show us what you got.
Awesome. So I'm super excited to be joining all of you guys today to talk about what I do at Riot and for League of Legends Esports. League of Legends is honestly the sport of the digitally native generation. It all started with one game, League of Legends. It was released in 2009, and it's a 5 versus 5 team-oriented action and strategy game. Each game lasts between 20 to 45 minutes, though I've seen them go as long as 70 or 80. Each game is a fresh start for all of the players. It's super competitive, sport-minded, focused on mastery, and above all, it's free to play. And because it's free to play, and it's so accessible to the online generation, it became a movement. We have over 300 million people who have downloaded our game. We have 8 million concurrent daily players around the world. On Twitch, we are over 1 billion hours watched. We have 30 million plus followers across all of our digital platforms. So the game is truly global, and our professional esports leagues are too. We have 13 professional leagues around the world in the world's first globally integrated esports league. And I call the League of Legends European Championship, or the LEC, my home during the normal competitive season. And each of these leagues also feature amongst themselves over 100 teams, and all of those teams have their own unique identities, their unique brands, and their unique players. So yeah, during the competitive season, I'm based in Berlin on a team of 4, as I said, where the League of Legends European Championship, or the LEC, is held. But I mentioned earlier that these leagues are globally integrated. And what that means is, within the normal competitive seasons these leagues hold, we also have 2 global tournaments where the best teams of each league will compete. That's our mid-season invitational and our World Championship, both of which I also work on the production team for. Our World Championship has come a long way since the first season. I know you mentioned ballrooms earlier, and that is definitely our humble beginning. Season 1, you can take a look. We've established Worlds essentially as the event for League of Legends esports each year. And season 1, it's jokingly referred to as being in the basement because of the production value. So we have ballroom tables. We're recording off of webcams and like a smaller production. I definitely wasn't there for this at the time. I won't say how young I was when this was happening, but I was definitely watching it from home. And from there, it just kept growing and growing. You can see with season 2, season 3, 4, 5, and 6. We start growing out of this conference room to selling out venues like the Staples Center in Los Angeles. In 2017, we sold out the Bird's Nest Olympic Stadium in Beijing. our 2018 World Championships. We did it in Seoul, South Korea. And most recently, we finished in last November our 2019 World Championship in the Accor Hotels Arena in Paris. And that was actually broadcast in 16 different languages. So we had a 21.8 million AMA, 44 million peak concurrent viewers. So there's definitely large viewership, a ton of interest, a very dedicated and passionate fan base, and everyone who's working behind the camera and in the studio is just as passionate about this game and the players as the audience who's packing the stands and watching from home.
So John, real quick, just, I mean, like those photos, if you go back one, just the sheer size of these venues and the production value that, I mean, just in a still I'm capturing right now. I mean, that's some of the largest events I feel like I've ever either observed or even been a part of myself in production perspective. So like when I'm looking at this right here, is this, did your team produce this experience, like from graphic to the control, like sort of the live show crew production component to it?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you guys bring in like external agencies as well to help you pull this stuff off?
This is definitely a collaboration between a ton of Rioters and our global broadcast offices and some external agencies as well. We have our own video content teams that are, right now you see a package playing out on our displays. That video is wholly shot, edited, and produced in-house by a mixture of our video content teams from, North America, Europe. Basically, all of Riot's individual studios come together and pick and borrow crew to make this, larger, massive crew to do these events. And we work with production partners like Concom Production Services in Berlin. We work with TD Skyline to help us, work with these venues, manage our relationships with vendors, get all the technology and equipment that we need, get all of the audio setup that we need, all of the tech that's powering this, where we're renting our trucks from. Those definitely, we don't have like a Riot production truck, but that's definitely a mixture of in-house and external vendor.
Love it. Cool.
Our producers are all in-house.
Right. And you're like creative directors or whatever. Whoever had a vision for this, that's kind of coming from in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Awesome.
So as I was saying, there's definitely a ton of viewership for this. And the biggest question that we get a lot is, what's so interesting about these experiences if you're not into esports, or how do I get into this, or how do I follow what's happening on the screen? What is League of Legends? So I'm going to quickly power through the super bare minimum of our game to just make sure that everyone here is in a baseline understanding about what we're covering, so I can talk a little about later about how we make this interesting for a viewer at home and what this actually means for our coverage.
Mm-hmm.
So League of Legends, as I said earlier, is a 5 versus 5 team-based game where every match is a fresh start, and each team has one goal: destroy the Nexus and the enemy's base. And this is the field of our sport that you see on the screen. It's Summoner's Rift. On the Rift, you'll see a few things. First, you'll see each team's base, the blue team and the red team. Inside of that is the Nexus that they have to destroy. Those bases are connected through 3 lanes: our top lane, middle lane, and bot lane. And along the lanes are turrets, and the turrets protect the path to the Nexus. So if you want to destroy the enemy's Nexus and win the game, you have to destroy the turrets that are blocking your way to get there. While you're playing, you're simultaneously doing offense and defense. So you have to defend your turrets and your Nexus to prevent yourself from losing, but you have to find these opportunities to play offensively to crack open the enemy's base and win. But where do these opportunities arise? So while you're playing, you can attack and kill opposing players to temporarily remove them from play until their character respawns. It's kind of like a power play mechanic. You think you're taking somebody out off the rink in hockey for a few minutes, and there's a huge opening to make some really big plays. In that moment, you kill somebody from the enemy team, they're not playing for 5, 10, 15, 30, 1 minute, a minute and a half. The penalty for dying increases throughout the game time. And while you kill opposing players or turrets, you get experience and gold that you use to level up your skills or buy items to make yourself stronger than the enemy team. So you have your character. You try to take experience and gold by killing the enemy and enemy bases and structures. You buy items and level up your skills to become stronger than the enemy team. And eventually you'll crack open their base and win. It seems pretty simple. But each player can choose one of over 148 different champions to play as, each with their own unique sets of skills that change how the game is played. So for example, you can play as Ashe, the Frost Archer, whose ultimate ability can target you from across the map and freeze you in place for a period in time. Or as Echo, who can rewind himself a few seconds into the past. Who you choose to play and in what combination of the possible 552 million permutations that your team can be composed of means that strategies are constantly evolving and no two games are ever going to be played the same. Which leads me into the region that I work out of, the League of Legends European Championship, because the LEC is the highest level of competition for esports in Europe. We have the 10 best European teams gathered, and they compete across 2 splits, in the spring split and the summer split. Each split consists of a regular season where all of the teams play each other twice in a double round robin in our Berlin studio, and each split ends in a playoffs phase that ultimately whittles down the top 6 teams to the top 3 who compete in an offline roadshow event for our semifinals and finals. So for our broadcast weekly in the regular season, this is the LEC studio in Berlin. You can see the 2 sides that the teams will sit on and their playing stations. And there are a lot of production elements that are almost identical to what you would expect in traditional sports. We have a master control room powering all of this. We have a TD, director, assistant director, producers, teleprompter. We use VizRT for our graphics engine. We use EVS for replays and rollback. We use Fingerworks Telestration and Viz Libero for telestration and play breakdown, robo cameras, handheld cameras, jib cameras, remote shaders, audio consoles, you name it, we have it. We're doing it in our studio. And you can see, actually, I just have a quick clip playing of Jack, our director, who's currently calling the opening ceremony for our regular split this year. You can see in the top corner, we have a lot of LED screens and displays in our studio to make sure that we're covering all of the action that we're utilizing for this opening ceremony. And those are all controlled through Ventus Universe. Behind the master control room and behind the scenes, behind the stage, though, we have a few other elements that you wouldn't typically expect for coverage of a video game. In the top left corner, you can see Eva, who's one of our observers. She's our lead observer. And what an observer is an in-game camera operator. She's making sure that our team of observers, there's 3 of them, are constantly covering the live action on the field, getting replays and creative shots for our video content teams to do highlight reels for. If you look really carefully in the bottom left corner of that photo that she has, you'll see a shot box, which is connected to our ROS video switcher. When we're in game, our observers are actually calling and directing the action themselves, switching cameras, calling pip up or pip downs, picture in picture ups, picture in picture downs, to do split views of multiple areas on our map as well. In the middle, we have Ellis Parker, who is one of our league management associates and is refereeing the games. He has an overview of all 10 of the players' screens, a feed of the live show, access to the back end of our system to look at how the game is playing out so he can troubleshoot bugs, find exploits and glitches, and rewind the game if necessary, if teams were to pause or essentially throw up a flag. In the top right, we have Florian, who's doing our mix minus feed. This is a special world feed that goes out to our broadcast partners, which broadcast in 6 local languages throughout our normal split. Bottom right, we have Spoozy, makeup artist, all of the players, they have to look pretty. Whoever comes into the studio for the day, we make sure that they're looking nice. And then just a little bit of a behind the scenes video in the bottom left from 2018, before we rebranded as the European Championship. We used to be called the European League of Legends Championship Series. And so back when we were the EULCS, we did a series called Behind the Stream, which you can find on YouTube to see all of these production elements pairing together. And then for our road shows, of course, it takes an army. Our normal crew of 80 to 100 scale up. We bring in a lot more staff to make sure that we're getting through the show. We have production trucks that we will switch out of. We have multiple languages broadcasting in the arena at once for their feeds. So we have our English language broadcast. Our last split, we had China joining us and a local language broadcast partner as well for Greece. And I mean, these events truly blow me away working on them because the magic of working in production and why I find production so cool is the experience that it creates and seeing people in the flesh just celebrating the show that you're making, the teams, their favorite players, their favorite characters in the game too. all of that, it's just such a rush of adrenaline and truly why we do this show. So seeing it pull out in person each year when we do the show is crazy. But of course, with the COVID-19 situation, we are not doing all of these cool things that you see on the screen right now. I forgot that this slide was here, so I'm just gonna try to segue into this slide. You can see a few things. Our video content team doing promos of our players, our hero shots. You know, these guys are insane. They can do up to 300 actions on a computer in a second. Their reaction time is crazy. They make sure that they're in the peak of mental and physical condition so that they can have the fastest reaction times in the game itself. The top right, you can see our analyst desk. We're in between the matches. Our in-house on-air talent team break down what has just happened in the game. You can see kind of this pre-match in the bottom left corner where we're getting ready for the show and entering a phase called Champion Select, where they draft the characters in alternating order who they're going to play. And of course, in the bottom right, G2 has just won a game. We pull out, they're celebrating, the audience is cheering. They come down, the audience, after every game to, you know, do high fives and handshakes directly with our pros, take photos with them. These are all the elements that we typically enjoy in our studio and what we typically produce. Now is the COVID-19 slide, where most production entities right now it's very difficult to work from home and do television. We've seen the videos and I find them incredible of like newscasters setting up green screens to do reporting on the weather in their homes. And we've definitely done the same with our sport. The benefit, I guess, of having a virtual sport is that it can be played if you have a computer. And our teams are all living together in houses in Berlin, so they're able to compete with each other still virtually. And we're able to cover the action still through a cloud-based workflow that we have from home. We're switching the show in vMix. We're sending SRT feeds everywhere from a Nimble server. Our observers are still observing the game from the comfort of their homes. Our on-air talent team, you can see, have set up cameras, lights, and they're doing their analysis from home. And we're making do with what we have. And it's been a challenging experience, though a really fun one, trying to figure out, you know, we have all of these tools from a television studio and now they're gone. What do we do? And adjusting for that has been a crazy experience.
Real quick, John, on that one, I think that this one's been really fascinating. I was talking with him, you know, even just a few weeks ago. But so yeah, you guys in what I think it was like less than 48 hours, basically decentralized your entire production studio. Is that basically what you had to do?
A little bit longer than that, but it felt like it was 48 hours.
That's nice.
I mean, it was 96 ish. We were set up for our show. I think it was week 8. The numbers and time are just fake in this day and age to me. So I think it was week 8 of our normal season. We had just finished rehearsal. We had just returned from our crew meal break. Our on-air talent team were getting their mic packs on, getting final looks, and getting into their positions 15 minutes before show. And we got a report from one of our crew members that he had potentially been exposed to the virus. And our leadership team made the call to, out of an abundance of caution, you know, let's stop down the show. We're, you know, a lot of people in a very close space. So for safety, we're going to pause the show. For this week, we're going to suspend the league and we'll see what we can do in the normal week. So we actually, basically 12 minutes to air, had to figure out how we were immediately going off air because we start the show with a countdown timer.
Yeah.
And we addressed everyone. We said, hey, this is the situation. We'll see you with more news during the week. And almost immediately we went home and then started work on this. Our engineers are insane because I don't know how many of the members of the audience for this webinar are familiar with what internet is like in the heart of Berlin. But I'm calling you right now on a DSL connection. And it's definitely been really rough. Some of our on-air talent team members, when we were doing, you know, tech checks to see, hey, we need a webcam feed from you. What's your internet speed? They were getting 0.25 Mbps upload. So we had a ton of challenges going into this to see how we were going to make covering the game work, how we can make sure that if our on-air talent team are shoutcasting the game from home and we're doing analysis from home, that their camera feeds are coming in sync both to the game and each other. And this is what our engineers have come up with. It's utilizing a mixture of vMix, We're remoting into some of our workstations in the studio, so we're leveraging our Viz and our EVS systems, but through remote desktop. Those are sending out SRT feeds. All of these individual camera feeds from our on-air talent team, our observers, our EVS out, our Viz key and fill out, those are going to a Nimble server that are spitting out tons of SRT links, which we're ingesting onto our producers' PCs. And that has vMix on it, and we're calling and mixing the show on vMix. We're tracking on show flow and the monitor to our left to make sure that we're all on the same page. Monitor on our right, we have like a voice comms panel. We have like a super small multi-viewer that we're like resized because we have 12 screens open. And it's been a very stressing and validating, tough and exceptionally cool time to be working in this industry on this show. And I've never been prouder of the team that we have behind the scenes to make sure that we're still able to cover our gameplay and our viewership. I mean, everyone's at home. It's free to watch on Twitch. Our viewers are really happy that, you know, there's something to watch in these times.
So, okay, I think you guys are just killing it. And I think it's a great example of, you know, so much in production is about, or traditional, you know, sort of legacy, you might even call it production, is about creating these sort of local environments that are not dependent on the internet, not dependent on, have backups to backups to backups, you know, copper cable where you can, all that kind of stuff. And I think that what has happened to all of us, and then you guys as well on another level, is you're just getting thrusted into this idea of going, hey, how do I pull this off if I've got crew in different locations? You know, you might be a show caller in apartment A, you've got your Chiron or graphics generator over here, or VizRT, you've got your stream, you've got your observers, all that kind of stuff. A couple questions that are coming on this, John, I think would be good. Maybe you have some insight into. Jack Drury, actually, what's up, Jack? Hey, man. How many like vMix ops / studios are you running? If more than one, how are they playing together? And again, I know that you were saying, John, on the front end, you might not be the engineer on this. There is a guy that I think they wrote up an article, SVG wrote an article about, and he's definitely a good one to reach out to. But can you speak to that at all, John, or no?
Yeah, so SVG did an article about the setup that our colleagues in North America are running for the North American team, or the North American competitive coverage. It's the LCS. Yeah. Their work and our work are very close, but do have minor differences just because we're dealing with some unique challenges, as I said, with the internet. So we're running one master mix for vMix, which is our final program out, that receives our mixed observer feed, our final mixed on-air talent feed that gets in the EVS and our Viz channels as well. And I mentioned 2 feeds that are pre-mixed in separate instances. We have our observer mix feed, which is run in OBS. Our observers are all spectating from home, but we've given them stream decks. So our lead observer has a stream deck, which is essentially like a USB-based shot box that you would see on a video mixer. That's plugged into her computer. She's receiving the replay, and she can trigger the replays, the picture up, picture downs, on her own local system like she would do in our typical production environment. And then we receive that feed into our vMix. And then our on-air talent, we're pre-receiving all of their camera feeds on a separate system to reduce the bandwidth load on the main system. And that's coming in mixed for whoever's on the desk and comes into our master mix vMix. So 2 instances of vMix and 1 of OBS that I can account for. There might be more hidden in the background. Actually, every individual person to send their feeds as well, because we're using SRT protocol to receive them, just because the latency is so low and the bandwidth for SRT feeds is significantly lower than an RTMP feed. Everyone has an instance of vMix on their own home computers if they're sending a signal for the final encode to SRT that goes to our Nimble and then back to the master vMix.
Cool. And then what are you guys using for comm? Are you using anything specific for comm?
We are using the most Frankenstein. No, I'm just kidding. We have Unity for some of our comms. So normally our comms, we use Riedel systems, and that's for everything. That's for our teams who are communicating in-game locally to each other and making gameplay calls. It's for our referees, our engineers, our broadcast team. we found that different comm solutions works best for different use cases. So for example, our teams are using either TeamSpeak or Discord with our referees in it because it's the lowest latency for them. We're using Unity for the broadcast team behind the scenes to make sure that we have multiple channels of party lines so we can delineate engineers, emergency, queues for our on-air talent, the producer, like director or show calling line. Unity gives us a lot of channels there. Our observers and a lot of other individuals are using Discord as well. So it's a mixture of a few different things depending on the specific use case.
But I mean, that's the reality of it. Everyone's kind of trying to patch this thing together in this current climate. So, well, cool. There's loads of questions here. I think in this space, this is more of the engineering side. And like I said, but it's a real space where everyone's trying to solve for. I think what's cool is they can do it, others can do it, and so we're already seeing, across the industry, different ways people are doing this, whether they're building their own little kind of vMix, webinar studio in their basement or whatever. I think that's all the right space. ShowFlow is a part of it. You can see it on that slide there. That's just one of the pieces that help these teams kind of communicate together. And so I love it, dude. And I think you guys are just absolutely killing it. A couple of questions for you. Yeah. A couple questions for you, and then we'll jump into software. I liked this one. What's the average load-in time for your roadshow event versus your like big final events, just in terms of like load-in and complexity of that?
So the way I'm interpreting that question is like our European roadshow events versus the international finals, because the European
whatever
roadshows
the
are like the European
epic
local
one
finals
is versus the intermediate ones. Yeah.
So load-in for our European roadshow events typically is a week into our show weekend, and then we do a rehearsal day, 2 broadcast days, and load out immediately following the conclusion of the Sunday broadcast day into Monday.
Cool.
For our international events, it depends on the stage and the complexity. For example, Worlds has multiple stages. There's a play-in stage, a group stage, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, and we might change venues between them. So play-ins, for example, last year we hosted in our Berlin studio. So load-in time was, let's say, very minimal, 2 or 3 days. It was mainly scaling up the architecture to have all of our teams and all of the crew working on it and the multiple people there. Let's say a week. But it wasn't overly complex of a load-in. But for our finals in Paris, I'm not on the first line team there that arrives, so I know that it goes on for at least like a week and a half beforehand, but I would probably say that load-in is maybe even up to 2 weeks time.
Cool.
For the really large ones. For finals, we did, not just projections, but we had in the Bird's Nest Arena in China, we did AR with a virtual dragon. In Korea, we did an opening ceremonies called KDA, where characters from our game were actually in like a Korean K-pop group, and it was all VR tracked 3D rigs of the characters like singing and dancing in the live opening ceremony. So that took a lot of time. And then in Paris, we did basically screen projections that were transparent, so you could see a mixture of the projections and the singing on-air talent.
So
that takes time.
Well, okay, so let's switch gears. If you want to stop sharing your screen, I'm going to launch a quick poll that I think would be helpful for everybody, and then we'll get into the software. So we just like to start with this one. Production workflow. Who we got on the audience. I want to kind of be adapting as we're engaging here with the different peeps. So if you don't mind voting, that would be super helpful. Sweet. And then just a reminder, keep sending the questions in. I'm seeing plenty of them come in. We'll try to get to them here in just a few minutes. But I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. 3, 2, 1, babamskis, and we're gonna share it. And it's cool, awesome. So ish a percentage of event agency, studio broadcast, a little bit more event broadcast, game pres is in there. That's awesome, man. I think there's a lot of people who are kind of doing traditional sports game presentation, like venue game pres, that are looking to learn from how you kind of approach this. So it's awesome. And then you got internal corporate meetings and others. So cool. And then the next one that will just kind of be helpful for us in terms of knowing the audience and the roles. And that's just it. Are you more of a show caller? Are you more of a producer, director, show tech, other? Don't really know what other is, but maybe you can Slack us or whatever, chat us directly and we can get better at this. But we'll go ahead and get going for another 2 or 3 seconds here.
I'm laughing because in the background I'm getting a ton of Slack messages from Mark, who's our production manager for these giant international events. So he's seeing me stumble through these questions about Loaded, and he's the guy that organizes them.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, cool. So we got about 20-ish% show caller, a large percent producer, director. Awesome. Well, thanks again. Everybody really excited to have you on here. And we're going to switch into more of a software using, their usage of ShowFlow software in their kind of routine day in, day out. And even honestly, like in this post, virus, worldwide pandemic going on. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, John. And if you're ready, let me know. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Let me just minimize this chat window. Yeah, I can.
Cool, man. All right. So we are in ShowFlow, and just FYI, I think you guys have some really just beautiful setup. For anyone who's just first on and looking at ShowFlow, so ShowFlow is basically a place where you can build rundowns or schedules, things of that nature, invite people in, collaborate on it, and then do a whole bunch of other really cool things, which we'll walk through. So you guys, like John has mentioned, there's both like the weekly or whatever, there's like the in-studio games and broadcasts that you guys do, and then you've got your actual events, and so you kind of separate those out. We're going to probably just focus in on what your studio type setup looks like, because I think you're trying to do that more in a decentralized way right now, which is interesting, and I want to make sure we spend time talking about that. In general, he uses like columns to break them out into weeks, and then from in there has his rundowns. Day 1, and some sort of tester baby in here. That's a good one. So,
yeah, that was week 2 of having ShowFlow. I was like, let's test building a production schedule, baby.
Oh man,
was that a list? I think it was a list.
It was probably a list. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And then so you guys have got like just it's got to be somewhere in the 25-ish, 30. I'll get out here so their emails aren't just public.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys got a wide range of crew. Who has access to ShowFlow? As I'm kind of clinking in here, just talk to us about who on your team have you invited into ShowFlow?
So on ShowFlow, we have all of our on-air talent team, so they can review the script on the go with their phones, tablets, computers. It's very easy for them now to be able to see the most recent version of the script, make notes, edit it on the fly, as they're getting into the studio. We have our director, Jack, who's on it, just so he can track along with us. We have members of our audio team, our graphics team, EVS, stage managers, shaders, everyone who would benefit from tracking essentially is on ShowFlow. All the producers, our writers, stats team, so they can fill in information there, and they all fill into ShowFlow. And then we're able to use the guest pass feature to distribute copies of our script to our international broadcast partners who are curious about where our show is going for that day, and do printouts of the guest pass or PDF export for our crew that are operating off of paper copies, because it's television. You can't break old habits all the time.
I hear it, and we're okay with it, but I think that in general, okay, so that's awesome. So then are you on the guest pass side, how many people in general? Is that like another 20 or 30 people, or just another 2 or 3 people?
I'd say it's 20 to 30. So with our broadcast partners, I said earlier, we broadcast in up to 6 different languages. And what our broadcast partners do is they're able to see the run of show and what elements we're going to be sending down the line to them. That's our sound on tape, any major interviews that are happening or highlighted. Those all go down to our world feed. So their crew, their on-air talent, they're checking this beforehand to see what we're doing on the show so they can build, their local coverage around it.
Cool. And yeah, just a reminder, so basically in ShowFlow, these types of views where you can be in a little bit more of an interactive, collaborative tracking, that's going to be a user. You have a ShowFlow user account and stuff. But this guest pass that John was talking about is something that just generates a URL you can share in a text message, an email, and really every time they just hit that URL, it just loads the latest and greatest, which is one of its use cases. Okay, so I'm looking at loads of color. Walk me through colors. So you guys are using colors to represent certain things?
Yes.
What are they?
So our advertisements and commercial breaks are going to be shades of purple. Our SOTs, sound on tapes, are going to be white. We have interviews or major elements that are going down to our broadcast partners called out with yellow. For our in-game elements, the champion select portion, where it's a mixture of game coverage and cameras, are that lime green. And then our full game coverage is blue. We also then assign specific colors in the script to the members of our on-air talent team, and any specific colored callouts that we want to make towards members of our on-air talent team for the read that they're doing.
Cool. And then now, is your team, because you guys actually have a load of columns here, does your different people who are logged in, do they kind of like reorder the columns, kind of do their own views, or does everyone just kind of go with all columns?
So we've established in our template that we've made for our regular season show a rough hierarchy of columns. We do use all of these columns in every show in some way, shape, or form. And as they're ordered right now is kind of that default, where the most common columns that are the most used information or relevant information to members of our teams are farther on the left. So if our director does choose to make a note that's relevant for everyone on our team, that's the most left. What video, audio, graphic elements are happening there, the script, and then less common elements like the ID numbers for like our trio scenes, our EVS roles are listed farther to the right. And then if people need to reorder it, they will reorder it, but because it's optimized for most common first, it reduces the amount of people that need to at the top of day to come in and reorder the columns, even though that's a pretty quick job to do.
Yeah. And we're gonna hit the script here in a minute, but real quick on time. So you guys are definitely using what we kind of call override times in show flow, which is that idea of, hey, regardless of whatever happened up above, we're definitely saying end of game is at 17 minutes. And then you use that point as a flag in the ground to then generate auto calculated times from there. So just walk me through kind of like y'all's pattern of when and why would you actually override certain times versus others?
Yeah, would you love to, could you scroll up to the top? Let's go to the ready check block. That's like item 5, I think, in this script. We use all of the time functionalities in ShowFlow religiously. So we use start time, and we'll override the start time at certain times. We use preset time, and we use duration. We even use show caller tracking with duration override. You can see in the duration column for item 9, it's like 4:47. That was timed to be 5 minutes, and we tracked. This is the aftermath of tracking with recording the time. And I'll break down what we use for each individual thing. So Ready Check is our pre-show coverage. It's a 30-minute top of day show where we say, these are the games up ahead. This is our breakdown or analysis of it. Sometimes we do snarky, sarcastic bits like you see here with LAC Update, and then we get into more coverage. But because this is always 30 minutes, it always starts at 17:30. We will override the time to say, okay, this is starting at 17:30. And we pre-time our segments to have a duration in the farthest right column. Because we know that this block of our show is 30 minutes, we'll also set the preset time to 30 for another reason. So the first reason for start time is, with our duration, we can always see around what time something's going to be happening. For our broadcast partners, this communicates, hey, we've just updated the runtime for item 9. There's an interview in item 13. The new time is going to be 17:52 instead of 17:50. Those times are super relevant to our teams, our referees, our player management, and our player support staff. They need to know what's happening roughly when. So that lets us do an estimate. And then when we track in real time with our duration, those times that are relevant also all live update. So anybody who's tuned in on their phones or has a guest pass and refreshes it can see what the new estimated time for these moments are. For preset time, we're using this to essentially make an over-under timer. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this block, you can see toss to casters, 4:24 in the red. It's in the red because we forgot to show caller track at item 21. It definitely was not 6 minutes and 7 seconds. But what this lets us do is, if we're halfway through Ready Check, we're in a SOT, we can look at line 22. That preset time should be 0 because the timing of this 30-minute block should end with a 30-minute preset time at 0. If it's 1 minute in the red, it means that I have to shave a minute off my broadcast. If it's 2 minutes white, that means I'm way under and I need to start filling and looking for time. So that's how we're leveraging all of these different timing tools in ShowFlow. If you look at item 27, end of game 1, it has a forced preset time of 17, and we've hidden the start time essentially at this point. That's because our games are variable in time. There's never an explicit start time. We take them when they come. The only guaranteed start time is the first game at 1800. But we do know that we have a 17-minute transition time from the end of game 1 to the start of game 2. After those 17 minutes, the game's ready and we can start. So any content that we have in between that for our post-match analysis, any commercial breaks, our interviews that are happening in there, we need to hit that 17-minute mark as close as possible. Otherwise, the teams are sitting on stage, we're not hitting our transition goals, it's delayed. So that's where show caller tracking with duration again is super relevant to us, because for our win moment, for our player of the game discussion, for our interview, those are all highly variable in times. So by the time we hit the things that are consistent and solid, like our 1 minute advertisement roll or 5 minute 30-second break, we'll be able to look at where the preset time is on, item 37, welcome back pre-match, to see how over or how under we are and how much time we have to fill. Looks like, again, we got into bad practice in item 36 and forgot to track with the correct duration. We definitely weren't over time. I think this is a script from like week 2 or week 3 of us using ShowFlow, so it's pretty early on.
Yeah.
Best practices, getting used to the software.
That makes sense. You're gonna love what we're working on. We've already got up on our staging environment an over/under sort of clock that kind of helps. With this.
I would love it. It would be incredible.
I know.
Give me more information.
A couple of the other esports teams are really looking for that too. Okay, so let's.
Oh
no, you're good.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let me switch this over real quick. So I'm really fascinated with what you guys are doing in the script, right? So you've got some really cool like colors going on here. So you guys were using the full-on teleprompter option in the studio type environment. Is that right?
Yes. So our current setup is we have a teleprompter operator who's in teleprompter view on his own PC. And we are doing an HDMI to an HDMI out into our routing system, and we're able to route then this desktop capture to our teleprompter screens throughout the studio.
Cool. So, and do you guys use any of the like live real-time components to it, or is it just kind of like, how do you navigate making edits, on the fly and sending notes to the actual like talent, I guess?
Yeah, so we're constantly updating our script as the show goes on for elements that are variable. So if you think, who's our interview guest, or who is the player of the game nominees, we're going to be editing those scripts during the show. But for our larger elements, like this pre-scripted segment, we're not doing a lot of edits live. We're doing edits in rehearsal. It's really easy for us to let me step back and just do a chronological thing, because I'm working backwards. We start our show day with a read through. In read through, it's super easy for me to connect my laptop to the TV display that's in the green room, and I'm able to make edits as I'm prompting to little word changes that they want. Let's say, oh, let's actually change it from once you've seen it to once you have seen it. Get rid of the contraction there. I can just go in and make a quick edit. That's super awesome for us. Once we're in show, our writer is on a separate station from our teleprompter operator, and he's making edits in compact view, and those are displaying live in the prompter as those edits are made. And you can see we're utilizing the rich text features of ShowFlow to get a lot of information really communicated about who's talking. So each member of the on-air talent team has a specific color highlight, which pulls up, who should be talking. Look, this is your line. And if you scroll down to one of the later items, let's say just a little farther down. Yeah, right there. Once we get out of like a really big scripted segment into more of our bullet talking points, these are our analysts saying, we're going to talk about who the new teams are. We're going to ad-lib the points here and see where the conversation or debate takes us. We'll give them the bullet points, but then the elements that we have available for them that we're going to run, like our graphics, you can see in our green, our lower third chyron that's highlighting the Mad Lions versus Misfits lineup. They know that that's coming and they can see it in prompter rather than having to have a separate display view or computer open in front of them. And it's a really effective way that we found to communicate that information. If we have B-roll that's playing over their video, that's going to be communicated just in a quick line that's magenta, with a quick description of what the B-roll is. So you can see B-roll Team Rogue. It's their team lineup, and it says 2x2. 2x2 is the code name that we have for the B-roll. Instead of being full frame, it's going to the 2-screen by 2-screen display wall that we have behind them. So all of that information is able to be easily conveyed and decoded because of the rich text functionality. It was a godsend, in my opinion. Before, we were using a MOS-based teleprompter solution, which was feeding into AutoCue. And AutoCue, definitely a powerhouse, but with the setup that we had for live edits, it couldn't communicate things like color and other rich text. It was mainly just plain white. So information got super cluttered. It was hard to follow at times. Bullet points were like ASCII dashes, so they didn't stay indented when we were prompting. So the organization, the view of it, honestly has truly been great. And yeah, as you can see, if we need to make a quick edit on the fly, that color updated immediately.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we've really been excited about is you're really tying your prompter to your rundown, which is more of a broadcast type thing. But so if I was just change that to be purple, but what the flexibility that gives you is you could actually be either in rehearsals, or one person could be working on a script and another one, and certainly in the live broadcast like you guys, you might be as players or in the game or as the game's developing, and your narrative is sort of changing who's winning, you could already be working on the script that's 3 or 4 elements below and making those appropriate changes, even if it's as simple just adding in the players' names on the way out to a break or not. Those small little changes right there is where the whole kind of integrated prompter with show flow thing really takes off.
Yeah. For our post-match analysis, when the games are going on and we're building out, this is the replay that we want to talk about, or this is the moment in the game that I want to break down. Some of our on-air talent, they're sitting in the green room, or they're on a meal break, or they're getting a breath of fresh air, and we're still able to coordinate from their laptops, even when they're spread out and not immediately accessible on a comm system, those talking points and where we want to go in the analysis that's going to follow the games. So this cloud-based system has just really been flexible and positively embraced by our team.
That's awesome. And then now that you're like actually in, whatever, this pandemic scenario where we've got to not be hanging out in the studio anymore, you were telling me before the call that you're actually have your commentators or your panelists, whatever it might be, actually using featured view. Is that right? Like, describe that setup.
Yeah, so in our new setup for our remote production from home, we have a lot less scripted segments because the complexity of, look at this camera, we're going to be pre-scripting these points, there's the telestrator, we're drawing this. The complexity of our scripts have really reduced down and actually closely match what you see here, which are bullet points and what the assets are. So without the need for a teleprompter, because everyone is sitting at their home computer and there's a webcam, our on-air talent team keeps show flow open in a window. On featured view, they're able to set the text size as needed, and they track the producer or the show caller for that day. And when the show caller advances, it pushes forward the script into the next item. And when that happens, they're able to follow along, and we can even cue them through that system. We don't have a really effective solution right now for us to do voice-based communication, like through an IFB or a talkback button. We don't have a talkback solution. So our talents are able to see our cues without talkback when we advance, or when it's not shown here, it's a beta feature, but we're using one of your beta features to show when they want to go back one. I don't know if you want to talk about it or not. When
they want to go back one? Oh, yeah.
So one of the features that you've enabled for us to trial also highlights where people are editing.
Yeah.
And so if our on-air talent, they're automatically advancing and tracking the show, but if they want to go back, they can just click the box above, and we can see that they've clicked the item above. And when that happens, we're like, oh, okay, we're gonna track back a moment. There's another talking point. So there's some two-way feedback going on here. It's really cool.
I like it. Yeah, and I think that's a big challenge that a lot of people have, whether you're in corporate or broadcast or whatever, which is I mean, I was watching Orlando's just really exciting local news this morning, but the whole idea of like they're cutting to the camera and then the anchor still, he just doesn't have all those luxuries of, you know, IFB and even a producer going, you're live, you know, things of that nature. And so whether you're using show caller's tracking feature or other sort of aspects, I mean, that's what it is. These are tools that help producers kind of produce a better show than they would when they don't have all those kind of luxury aspects that they get when you're in more of a studio setup or a backstage setup. Okay, so let us take a hot minute here and answer a few questions because we've got loads of them coming up. So I like this one. Why choose ShowFlow over, you know, some of the other options that you might have been looking at, whether it was obviously Google Sheets or Excel or even any of the larger, you know, ENPS, iNews level kind of like broadcast solutions? Why ShowFlow?
So in the past, we've used a lot of the news-based solutions, and I am very familiar with building production schedules in Excel from my time before, before ShowFlow. So let's talk about why larger than Google Sheets. For us, for our script, our timings, how quickly these things update, we had enjoyed prior to ShowFlow live teleprompter updating for these moments where we need to constantly have, you know, new names, new things inside. Studio-based teleprompter solution also conveying a lot of information to our production environment and making sure that, you know, the versions are easy to track, it's easily accessible, there's not constant resizing of the screens, things like this. You can work around that in Google Sheets, but the teleprompter automation was the big question for us. So that gets into the why ShowFlow, which is a lot of the prior systems that we had been using were server-based, not super easily accessible cloud-based. You had to either set up a VPN, make sure you were on the correct network. In our production space, where we have the network that the game is running on, the network that the engineering is running on, a guest network, all these Wi-Fi networks that people are switching between, we would lose access to our systems. So having ShowFlow integrate to web-based solution, it's easily visible from computers. It's easily visible from our on-air talent team and our stage managers' cell phones. Our stage managers have the ShowFlow app on their phone, and they're referencing that as we're, you know, doing transitions rather than lugging a laptop with pieces of paper around. All of that cloud-based quick reference, quick editing was a no-brainer for us. And then you add on top of the fact that it had all of this rich text editing, colors, things like that. With the teleprompting feature, this is what made it a no-brainer for us. It was also just super affordable. I mean, some of the larger, you know, rundown creator based style like systems can get pretty pricey depending on how you scale. And for the use case that we had, the ability to spit out a guest pass to all of our broadcast partners and have them be able to follow along without having to constantly spit out PDFs was super useful. I was really excited to try out the production schedule feature for our road shows, but we're at home. We haven't put that to the test yet, but it was also a big deciding factor for us. The ability to, let's say, instead of, I mean, we did a lot of paper waste, and we like to be very environmentally conscious. We have, you know, a big recycling program. We have a big sustainability program in our studios to make sure that, like, even with our catering, we're not generating paper waste, plastic waste, wasted food. We're making sure that's all composted. So doing that and then having a production schedule for a roadshow posted in 100 places, taped to the wall, printed out, and then there's a new version and it's reprinted was a ton of paper waste for us. So just printing out a QR code, or everyone bookmarks the link in that production schedule. Whenever it's updated, it's pushed out and they just need to open the guest pass to see it, was, you know, a huge deciding factor for us too.
That is awesome. Okay, I haven't even heard that yet. So you guys do like a little QR code and then people just scan it when they walk by it in the hallway and they can get right to the guest pass?
That was the plan.
That's the plan? It's a good one. We should just build that ourselves. I like that. That's genius. Well, cool, man. Well, we're coming up to the end. We're going to keep going for another, obviously, period of time and answer all these questions. But just in summary, I think you just covered a good amount of it. But I really liked, so basically, you guys are now in this kind of crazy decentralized workflow. We don't know how we're going to do it. You guys are pulling off, you know, still these live streams to Twitch that are getting viewership that's, when every other major sport is basically frozen and just, not able to move forward, you guys are just excelling. But at the same time, where maybe, VPNing into your studio to get access to your Grass Valley video switcher or whatever, those types of things held you back. Sounds like ShowFlow was able to kind of like meet you right where you're at. He's still able to use it, still able to track live during your games and during your broadcast, even while in kind of your remote setup. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, 100%. And where all of the systems are changing to become cloud-based, right? And we're trying to figure out how do we make something work in the cloud. We didn't have to stress about our rundown, where we're making our rundown and how we're getting our script built, what that system was looking like. So having it already in the cloud was like, whew,
Right.
one less thing to worry about.
2 points for internet. Yay. Okay, cool. Well, hey, I just want to mention for anyone, please, I want to encourage everyone to stick around. We're going to keep working through all these questions, but just for people who are interested, obviously, ShowFlow, head over to showflow.tv. We are going to keep doing these webinars until people stop showing up. We just feel like our audience and our user base, not everyone is like John and the esports industry, where they're just, can't get any sleep because they're working their butts off so much. A lot of us are waiting for the live events industry or for the sports industry to catch back up. And so all we want to do is crank out good content and stuff that's helpful for you guys, help you get to learn other parts of the overall production industry, and maybe gain insights on how you might see if it's something you might want to get into yourself. So the webinars are all over here, and then these are our upcoming ones, which we've got coming up next week. John Webking from Minnesota State, and then a really cool one if you're in the event agency world, Ginger Evans with Mary Kay. And then after that, we've got just a larger kind of product webinar. So I appreciate it. Feel free to use the little blue chat down here and talk to ShowFlow. We want to get you a sandbox, extended trial, whatever you need. Just come in here, play around with the features that you heard John talk about today. Cool. John, we're going to go back to you, and we're going to keep rocking for a couple more minutes.
Sure.
All right, dude. So I got a couple of fun questions. I seem more esports but I like this question. What is your experience like for fans, like out of the competition viewing? So i.e., do the fans attending the event see the competition differently than those viewing the broadcast that your teams actually make?
It's a really good question. The viewing experience, I'm going to start in our home studio, and then I'll go out to, let's say, our international events, our road shows. They can see the program feed. If you're in-house or as an audience member, they're able to see program feed on a projector, so they can see what we're pushing out. If you're in the studio itself, you're able to sit in the audience, you're able to interact with the pros. I said earlier, after the win moment, the audience stands up, and the pros, once they've just finished the game, they literally walk to the edge of the stage, high five their fans, shake their hands, take a selfie with them. There's a meet and greet following the game. So, the stars of our broadcast, these players who are at the peak of almost the world competition. Europe was second place in Worlds this year. We were able to have our fans directly engage with them. Outside of that immediate studio where the competition is, there's also a lounge area where there's merchandise, photo activations. People can dress up in cosplay or costumes of their favorite champions from the game. And take pictures with each other. There's a huge social element to it. So that's in our home studio. We do shots of our audience. We do shots of those activations at the top of our blocks and look lives, or just live handheld coverage. So we make sure that the fans at home can see what's happening in the studio, and the people in the studio can still see the gameplay that's happening, being covered in our program feed. Another cool thing about being on the web and broadcasting to the web for our virtual fans is we broadcast to Twitch and YouTube. Both of those have live chat functionality. If there are people spamming certain messages or emotes in Twitch chat, we can call it out on air. We can do live voting integrations. So we can say, who do you think is going to win? If you go to slide, let me see which number it is, slide 30 for me. In the top right corner, you can see, oh yeah, there's going to be, you can skip it in the bottom left corner or just scroll straight to it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
You can see on the front of the analyst desk in the top right corner, this segment is happening while we're doing live votes on air, and you can see what team's going to win, Origin or the chat's blocking it, Fnatic, 37-63%, and that's live updating throughout, and our analysts are able to even directly talk with the viewers at home or say like, well, this person in chat said this. This is what I think about it. So those are all elements of the fan experience. When we're on our road shows, it scales up. We have not just what's happening in the arena and we cover it. We do opening ceremonies for our Worlds events. Those include giant musical numbers, stars like popular K-pop performers, popular musicians. Those are all performances that happen. Those are always preceded both in the European finals and the international finals by community activations. It's almost like a convention. So you can meet the teams, or you can challenge strangers on the game to a 1-versus-1. You can win prizes. You can go to the sponsor booths. It's a holistic experience for the viewers at home from start to finish for engaging with their favorite teams, their favorite game, their favorite players. Really cool ways.
Is there a different producer, John, who's producing for the venue and the experiences in the venue than it is the ones that are producing for obviously the live internet viewership, like Twitch?
No, it's us. It's us. It's the same team for Europe's finals. For Worlds, we have an opening ceremony unit. We have a world feed unit. We have the English language unit, China unit, Italy unit, like every individual unit there. So there are a ton of production teams for the international events, and the opening ceremony is one experience team. The pre-events are another. But in Europe, the in-venue experiences are done by the LEC team holistically, and also through partnerships with our teams, because our teams will say, hey, we're going to rent out like this restaurant and do this event. And it's going to be like, let's sync up the times, make sure that we're sharing the audience there so we can get fan activations. So it's partnerships, but mostly in-house, yeah.
Cool. One from someone was, for Leagues of Legends specifically, what do you guys use to fill the 3-minute spectator delay? What is the 3-minute spectator delay? And then, yeah, how do you fill it?
So we have a true gamer here.
Yeah.
So if you're playing on our main server, so if you're a normal user and you want to spectate a game that's happening, that's not one of our competitive, let's say, LEC games, you can watch that. But to make sure you're not whispering the locations of the enemy team or what their strategy is, you can only view it on a forced 3-minute delay. Now, for the LEC and for Riot Games events, we also make the game that we're covering. So we're able to make modifications to our clients to get around that. So we don't have any forced delay for Riot events that our official observers and spectators have to deal with. While we're in this online kind of gameplay world, we are doing artificial delay that we're adding on our own end that's not forced, of 10 minutes. Because what that lets us do is, if there are any technical difficulties, let's say there's an internet outage, we can pause the game. It's treated as a flag, if you think like a flag in football or something, where you're challenging a ref's call or saying that there's a glitch in the game and we need a referee to do it. We can also do technical pauses if there are internet issues. When that happens, and it's likely to happen when we're in this remote production world, by having that 10-minute delay, it builds a nice buffer, because in game we're not rolling it from tape. The delay is applied in the observer's client. So in the camera operator's game client, they can press pause themselves, or they can slow-mo themselves and zoom in and control time on their own unit. So they pause when the game starts, and then they play it out. And because the pause isn't on tape, it means that, let's say there was a pause at the 7-minute mark in the game. Well, that was resolved 10 minutes ago on the delay. We don't see the pause at all in our coverage, because the game ignores that in how it plays out on the observer's PCs once they're watching it in their delayed state. So it's really a cool way for us to avoid some technical problems too, by adding this delay.
Yeah. And then how are you guys, like on a large event like this? There's obviously ticket sales, I'm sure, for this, but just on the weekly kind of routine stuff, I mean, how does Riot, is it sponsorship that you guys are selling, and just sort of sponsorship for like commercial breaks like you would traditional broadcast television?
So we are very lucky to have a ton of broadcast sponsors for our show. On the LEC, we have Becco, we have Kia, Kit Kat, Oh, Kit Kat's my favorite integration because their slogan is "Have a break," and they've sponsored our pauses. So whenever there's a pause in game, it's Kit Kat, have a break.
Yeah,
We're
great.
sponsored by Warner Music Group, and we, partner with them for music activations for our international events. In 2019, we were sponsored by Louis Vuitton for the international event. So they had this awesome Louis Vuitton trophy case that held the trophy and folded out on stage in the opening ceremonies. We had models, a fashion line for League of Legends, but also in the game, if you were playing our game, you could buy a Louis Vuitton skin or character outfit for your champion to wear as you're playing the game. So all these activations have been super awesome partnering with these guys. We have ticket sales for LEC Studio normally on a weekly basis, and we also have typical commercial breaks and ad revenue that we get from YouTube, Twitch, things like that as well. So multiple things there.
The when we're thinking about like the observers, this was from Danila. There's different observers, and do you guys kind of produce their role and what they're sort of following, or are you just totally just following them and letting them just follow their own intuition as they're kind of tracking around on the game? And even just for a second, like remind people who aren't familiar, like what an observer's role is.
Yeah. So let's go back a slide and we can go see, let me see here where the observer photo is. If you go back one or two slides.
Right here.
Yep, so that's Eva. She's our lead observer on the LEC. You can see behind her is Unzo, who's our typical second observer, and then off screen, unfortunately, is Yannick, who's our third observer. Our observing team, I like to brag, I think is the best in the world. They write what's called the observer handbook, and that gets sent out to a lot of other observers. But what an observer is basically an in-game camera operator. So on their PCs, they have a very interesting setup. They have four monitors. Above, they have what's called, we call it a God view, which is just everything that's happening on the game field. And this allows them to more accurately track major plays if they're not actively on that as a camera operator to follow what's happening in the game. On a monitor to the side, they have the program view. On the monitor to this side, they have Viz graphics preview to see if any graphics are going to trigger. And then dead right center is their view for actually controlling their in-game camera. What they do as observers is they have divided tasks with core focuses. So our lead observer is actually directing us essentially and mixing the show while being the main camera operator. What Eva is doing is following the action, zooming in, out, following players, toggling things called fog of war, where you can only see what's near you in the game, so you can't see the full map. So we can switch to see what specific people are able to see rather than this massive view herself as well. So that toggling for all that information is on her end. She has a shot box, which connects to our ROS video switcher. That shot box can animate graphics, start a replay, which I'll get to in a second. It can go picture in picture. It can do what we call a base race, where the two teams are both in each other's bases. Neither of them are defending. It's a race to see who can destroy the Nexus the fastest at this point, and it's one of the hypest things that we can see in our game. So we see both of the bases at once in a split screen. All of those are controlled by the shot box. For replays, we have Observer 2. So Observer 1 is always live. It's always what's happening in the game right now. Observer 2 is following the game, and if there's a big play, we'll pause, rewind, and set up their camera. So when Eva on the shot box triggers a replay, we have our graphic wipe, the second observer unpauses, will cover the whole replay, not through tape, just natively inside of his game client. And what he's able to do then is, if there's a really complex team fight that's happening, slow down time to 1/4 speed and really zoom in so we can break down that replay, all from his keyboard. And then they hit the shot box, go back to live, and we're back on the Observer 1 PC. Our third observer is going to our EVS tape system. We do a lot of video content for our show, and these require like super complex replays where instead of doing a live kind of camera motion, we're able to use keyframes in a software to automate the camera movements to be really specific. So he's getting requests from our content creation teams, our social media teams, saying, hey, this play, can you zoom in, have it do a spin? We see this, it flips up, we see that, boom. He's making all those keyframes, and then that's going to our EVS system to record and then send out to all of our teams. Also, a backup, because we can take it live if we need be. So our observers have core duties. They're directing the show as we're in it, triggering graphics, replays, picture-in-pictures, up, down, because our observers are incredibly skilled players of the game themselves. How you would typically expect, let's say a large play is happening, or let's say you're covering NASCAR, right? And you need to get to 2 different spaces on the track. You're probably using multiple cameras and you're cutting cameras for that. We don't cut between observers unless there's a replay. So if there's action happening on the other side of the map, there's actually a hotkey on Eva's Observer 1 keyboard that lets her cut or immediately jump to that specific user or that specific space on the map. So the cutting that's happening in game for observers is actually just one observer herself using keybinds and looking at the mini map and the God view to see where she needs to go to cover the gameplay the best. So unexpected nuances of observing.
I think it's one of the more fascinating parts of it because it's from like a production perspective. It's not a normal role that you would have in the other major kind of like live network television, sports, or even the event, sort of live event space. That this concept of just there's one person who's kind of your star player, but they're not a player. They're like your star production person, and they're moving around and they're sort of seeking out the story actively. And then really the greater production team is kind of producing a show around them to an extent. I think the
really,
sorry, go ahead, John.
So in a second, in the bottom left, we're about to go into the observer room, I think, and we'll be able to see what they do. So when it gets there, I'll call it out and talk about the tech that's in their room. But sorry, go ahead, continue.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's, and I'll look for it too. I think the closest you can think about it would actually be like a live event or like an event agency type ballroom experience where the stage manager or the show caller is actually probably calling screen presets, which is move in and out of IMAG, move in and out of video playback graphics, or even like a Vista, spider preset of multiple things. But when they throw up IMAG, it's actually the director who's just, cutting between cameras and kind of finding his own story inside of it. That's the closest one I can think of to that idea.
Definitely. I misjudged the timing. If you skip to the 2-minute and 48-second mark in that video in the bottom left corner, you throw it full screen. Ooh, it might be tricky with that bar.
Yeah, it keeps
right
getting
there.
in my way.
So this is our observer lounge. You can see the setup with the God PC program, our observer team talking and calling the shots of the show. So Eva is following the action of this fight that's happening on the Rift, and Daniel, who's in the Observer 2 slot here, he's calling what's happening slightly away from her screen. So there's so much action happening that she's actually focused on this, and she's not looking at the God display. So he's calling what's happening and where she can like readjust into where it's going or what's about to happen or where somebody's moving. So she knows where to jump next. She's focused on this giant fight. You can see all the observers there and how it plays out on broadcast.
So cool. Well, okay, so last question or two, and then we'll probably just call it a breather for the day, but this has been super helpful, man. All right, so I'm going to take this out of full screen. Yeah, so I think just, yeah. So what solution do you use to connect distantly your talent and their audio and video signals? So I know it's kind of a generic one, but let's just talk about, let me kind of break that down. How are you talking to your talent? I know we talked about you don't have IFB, so are you doing it via chat for the most part? Are you doing that via Discord? Like, how are you actually talking to talent?
So we're able to talk to our talent through Discord very easily as kind of a one-way solution. If that's not Discord isn't capturing audio into what they're sending. So in their mix that they're receiving, if they have Discord in the background, we can talk to them in rehearsal and then hear back on their feeds when they're talking to us back. So in this situation, we're using Discord. We're also using chat. windows to coordinate to. Normally we use IFBs to synchronize their signals. It's receiving their SRT feeds because again, they're all transmitting their individual camera and their own individual audio through an SRT feed. We have a fast game feed, which is going to them before it hits air. They'll cast and commentate off of that feed. Then we receive their video, we sync them up, add delay to the mix that they're commentating on to resynchronize it for the final program, and then it goes out to air. Normally we have IFBs and talkback, and that's just a system that's super handy for us, but without it, this is where we are right now.
Absolutely nuts, man. So any sense on when your upcoming events, or I mean, have they already been put on like suspended or rescheduled or something at this point?
You know, the situation's constantly evolving, and guidance from the local German government, and also for if you consider our road shows, the governments around us, because we have to travel across borders to do these road shows, it's constantly evolving, and we're taking it as it comes in. It's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen. So where there's uncertainty, we're moving forward as originally planned, and maybe forming some backup options. And as we discover things are viable, aren't viable, we're adjusting course as it comes.
You and the rest of the world, man, we're all just trying to figure out how to get through this thing. Well, John, I just want to say again, thanks, man. I think you're doing some of the coolest, production that's out there right now, honestly. And then you guys are doing esports in general is baller. And, I think everyone was kind of like not giving it as much attention in the front end or being dismissive of it, they all kind of are regretting that. And so I think you guys are not only in the coolest space or one of the coolest spaces right now, but you're on the front end and you're doing it big, and you're doing it and you're really like leading and innovating in that space. And even in this crazy time right now when everyone had to hit pause and do it a totally different way, you guys are still kind of in the front seat. So thanks to you for doing that, and just kind of, you guys got an awesome team and a culture over there at Riot, and it just shows in the fact that how you guys have responded to this situation and all that. So thanks to you, man, and thanks to your team. I think you guys are awesome.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me the chance to share. I love talking about our little slice of the industry. Esports is such a cool and new form of broadcast that I think not everyone can immediately relate to or feels foreign. But it's the same elements, it's the same narrative, it's the same stories that you would expect from a sports broadcast. It's just the field and the rules of the game are a little bit different. So if you have a chance to catch some of our coverage, you can watch us on you can watch us on watch.lolesports.com. You can read more about our league by searching the LEC. Check out some of our international events online. They're killer. The opening ceremonies team honestly blows me away each year. If you have questions or concerns, I'm a bit flying crazy right now with our production because we're getting ready for our finals and another tournament that's going to run 5 production days a week. But send me a tweet or send me a message, and if I see it and I have some time, I'd love to keep the conversation going.
Cool, man. Well, thanks again, and I appreciate it. Anyone who's got any other questions, you can hit up John or reach out to us by going over to showflow.tv, using that little blue chat. We'll get you set up. You can use Showflow and just kind of use it as a sandbox and trial. So, all right, everybody, stay safe out there. And again, thank you, John. Catch you guys later this week or next week.